As the most iconic rookie card from baseball in the junk wax era of overproduction, the Ken Griffey Junior 1989 Upper Deck card has become a serious target for many collectors during the stimulus market, is what we're calling it these days. So the coronavirus stimulus checks have been hitting people's bank accounts, and many of those funds are being directed at sports cards. Of course, that's not the only reason. Because there's been no sports going on, the money that would otherwise be going to, say, game tickets, concessions, and the like are now going instead to sports cards. So, Ken Griffey Jr., of course, has always been a popular target among collectors. He is one of the best players of all time. When he first debuted, a lot of people thought that he could end up even beating Hank Aaron's home run record, which of course didn't happen. But had he stayed healthy in his later years in uh, in Cincinnati, especially, and of course he played for a couple other teams, including the White Sox, and he did return to the Mariners at the very end. Had he stayed healthier throughout the course of his career, he may have ended up hitting over 700 home runs. He, of course, still hit over 600, so that's pretty good. So his career numbers ended up being really good. Many rookies, of course, don't have nearly the nearly the actual career that people hope they're going to. But Griffey was one of those guys, and his father was a pretty good player himself, and played on some pretty good teams himself. And so I think he already had the pedigree, and so it's very it's always exciting when you see a son of a former major leaguer play. Of course, we have a ton of them now in today's baseball. Guys like Bo Bichette, who's Dante Bichette's son, and Fernando Tatis Jr., of course, probably the most exciting of all the young players. His father also was a pretty good player too, and so you know Ken Griffey Jr. had a very similar demand back in the day. But this card has actually aged really well to the point that his PSA 10 right now, so you could get his PSA 10 of this card just a year ago for about $500. And now you'd be lucky to find one for less than $1,400, as you can see right here on eBay in the last couple of days. And we've had 1375, 1475, 1450, and then plus shipping too. So right now, I mean, if you're looking to, and if you even want to get a PSA 9 of this card, you're looking over $200. And we just had one sell for $188 last week, and that was a card that you could have under $100. Like, even when we first started talking about these Griffey cards, only about a week before that, you could have had his PSA 9 for $95. So, and now when we actually started this series of talking about Ken Griffey Jr. cards under $100, the PSA 8, you could still get these for $50, $55, and now you'd be lucky to find one for less than $80. The Pit actually has one for $79, and has other holdings as well. So, but of course, PSA 8 is not really the condition that you're looking for. PSA 8 is equivalent basically to a near mint to mint raw card. So, obviously, it's good to have it graded because then it's authentic. But the point is here is that a PSA 8 now is going to cost not much less than, not much more than a raw card. So, which is pretty incredible. So this is actually a pretty good example of a PSA 8. One of the issues with the set is centering. Really, with any card is centering, but this particular PSA 8 actually looks pretty good. This is a stock photo. But anyway, so what I want to talk about today is we've been talking about different Ken Griffey Jr. cards under $100, and one that I want to look at today is the 89 Bowman PSA 9. So the PSA 10 is also much less than the Upper Deck. So the Bowman is probably, I would probably say, is probably the third most popular behind the Donruss rated rookie. So last week we looked at the score traded, and we looked at the Donruss rookies, which is different from the Donruss rated rookie, which is part of the regular base set. So the 89 Bowman. So Topps had brought back the Bowman brand in '89, and this card in particular has done pretty well over the years. But the interesting thing about Bowman is that it didn't have nearly, and I'm pretty sure it didn't have nearly the print run of Upper Deck. Upper Deck actually had a pretty huge print run. So if we look at even at the population numbers, on PSA. And you see how the upper deck card has 73,000 total graded, almost 3,800 tens and 24,000 nines and 30,000 eights. But if you look at the Bowman card, which is number 220 in the set, there's only about 20,000 of them actually graded, with only 1,885 tens, 10,000 nines, and 7,400 eights. So, but the incredible thing about this card, as you just saw, is that this is a card that you can actually get for around $30. So for the price of one PSA 9 upper deck, you could get, let's see, probably six. You could probably get six of these in PSA 9. And the Pit doesn't currently have a PSA 10, but the PSA 10s have been selling consistently on eBay recently for about $350 to $400, which is ridiculous when you think about it, because of the fact that that's a $400 card in the upper deck, which is considerably more common. Probably almost three times as common, because there's only about 2,000. So not two times as common, but not three times as common, but almost two times as common as the Bowman upper deck. And it's a nice looking card. I mean, it's a nice professional photo. It's got Griffey in a throwback M's uniform. So it's pretty nice card. This card's always been sought after. It's been going up over the years. But as you can see, the last trade we had of this card, even just, let's see, probably not even, maybe just a couple weeks ago, this card sold for $25, and now it's already up to $30, $35. So what's happened with the upper deck cards is, because the PSA 10 has gone up so much, the PSA 9s and even the PSA 8s have followed suit, because there's just not very many PSA 10s left for sale, because everybody's been buying them. They can afford them. So a lot of people are turning to the PSA 9s, because most people spending their stimulus check, they're probably not going to be spending $1,300 of it on a Griffey rookie, but they might spend $200 on a Griffey rookie, because that makes sense. Obviously, if you look at the population, the disparity does make sense. Because these are, what, like six times as more common as a. So that kind of makes sense. So actually, believe it or not, the 9 probably still has room to grow, especially as the 10 continues to grow. But what's interesting about the Bowman is that this card is $30 and the 10 is $400. And typically, you can see 10s be worth as much as 10 times. But in this case, the Bowman 9 is actually still kind of lagging behind when you compare it to the upper deck. So I personally really like the 89 Bowman. I don't like it as much as the upper deck. The upper deck is not only is it card number 1 of the set, and like one of the most iconic baseball cards of the late 80s and early 90s, and maybe of all time, really. But the difference between this card and that card is that this card is a lot more rare. There's also a Bowman Tiffany. So a Bowman Tiffany, they only made, I'd have to check the print runs, but so they actually, Bowman Tiffany was a box set, which was just basically a glossier version of the Bowman set that you could own, the hobby store owners could get and sell. And those cards are significantly more rare. In fact, this in PSA 10 Bowman Tiffany, I think there's only like 150 of them out there. So, and those cards sell for even more than the upper deck. I think they're in the 3,200 range. In fact, I think I do. Yep, here we go. So here's the 89 Bowman. So as you can see, the PSA 10 sold for about $380 about a week ago, and there was also a Tiffany that sold for $3,300. So that's obviously considerably more. But if you look at the population, they actually mention the population. They're 156. So that card is actually, the Tiffany card is so much rarer than the, it's probably 20 times as rare. It doesn't mean it'll be 20 times the price, obviously, but that card probably still has room to grow as well. So the Bowman, just even the regular Bowman card, this card is really gaining in value recently. And this card, like all the other Griffey cards, has seen a significant rise. So if I were to spend my money on Griffey rookie cards, and I wanted to go after a PSA 10, this is probably the one that I go after. is the Bowman. Personally, it's a good card. It's a good looking card. It is oversized. That was one thing about the Bowman cards, that they were oversized, and so they didn't fit in regular sleeves and regular binders. But of course, when they're PSA graded, that's not a problem because they have holders that'll hold them. Um, but they are slightly oversized compared to regular cards, and so these haven't, not as many of these Bowmans have survived in mint condition as the upper deck. And of course, I haven't checked the numbers, but I'm sure that Bowman was not nearly as popular as upper deck. I'm sure it wasn't. And in fact, I can guarantee you it wasn't. So I don't know the print run numbers, but I do know that Bowman Tiffany, they only made, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20,000. I have to check, but 10 or 20,000 total sets. And of course, you won't necessarily get a PSA 10 out of every set, even though they're, obviously factory sealed. Because of centering, or maybe something happened with the edges, or there was a surface issue or something like that. But as you can see, these cards do get very, very expensive. And actually, this was a good deal here. Somebody got two of these for $600, so that's really good. But yeah, so I mean, if you're looking to invest in a card, of Ken Griffey Junior's, I mean, you can get his PSA 9 for $33, which is incredible. I mean, you think about that for a minute. That you can get this card in PSA 9 for $33, and as I said, it's a card that, because of its dimensions, is a little bit, I believe it's a little bit taller than regular baseball cards. And because of that, as I said, not as many of these have survived the years and in mint condition. So very important. I mean, a lot of people, obviously, as soon as PSA opened in '93, probably sent these in. Um, but again, there's just so fewer of these. And unlike, say, the Donruss rookies and the Donruss rookies, of course, they tend to be more scarce simply because there weren't as many of those sets printed, because it was a subset that was printed separately from the regular Donruss set. But this is a Topps brand, and I mean, look at the population compared to the upper deck. I mean, I'm not saying that this card is going to end up being worth 3 times as much as the upper deck. I mean, that's just not how it works. But the fact that there are just so many more of them. So anyway, so this video is going a little bit long, but I wanted to talk about this card in depth today, because I really think that this card has a lot of room to grow. So let me know what you guys think. I mean, obviously, what's your favorite Ken Griffey card besides the upper deck card? Do you think that any of these cards are worth investing in? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and we'll be back with more market reports from ThePit.com.